What's going on, everyone? My name's Alex. That's Eileen, and you guys are watching and listening to the Straight to the Chicane podcast. And this week we're back with the Canadian GP. We're back in Montreal.
Yes.
We had a week break. We had kind of a lot going on. I think big news wise was the calendar.
The calendar dropped for 2026. Has a lot of people's panties in a twist.
It does.
Here in America.
Yeah, and we can get into that. What else did we have kind of come across? Lance Stroll had his surgery.
He's back.
And he's back, and he made it back. I was a little questionable whether or not.
You were, yes. And we were like, is Valtteri going to step in? Who are we going to see, step into the seat? Is Valtteri going to have to serve his, red penalty from Abu Dhabi 2024? But we didn't have to see that.
Also, Max Verstappen had one more penalty point before he gets a race ban. So there's kind of a lot going into the weekend. But before we get started, if you guys haven't liked, subscribe, comment below. Tell us what you guys think of the Canadian GP this weekend, because it was warm weather, no rain.
No rain, yes.
And typically it is raining.
I mean, I think everybody expects Canada to kind of be a wet weather weekend. And for me, since I've started watching it, I don't think we've ever gone through a weekend without at least a practice session, a quali session, or a rain mixture like last year where you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah. So. And 2 years ago when we were fortunate enough to go to the Montreal GP, it rained.
Yeah.
So on us. So yes, typically it does seem like it does like to rain. And now with the new calendar, a lot of things have changed. The Canadian GP now falls during the same time as the Indy 500.
Yeah, so Canada is moving forward.
Earlier in the month.
And essentially it's to make, geographic sense.
Totally.
So, we're going from Miami and then we're going to Canada. So we're in the same continent. So obviously keeping the two races together. But with that being said, it falls the same weekend. And next year specifically on the Indy 500.
So, yes, that being said, also earlier in the season, more towards earlier spring, mid-spring, when it even has more chance of being rain and more chance of being cold, too.
Yes. And well, that's what they were talking about this weekend, is that it's going to be cold next year during the, the Canadian.
It will be. So, it will be substantially cold.
What's that going to look like? So,
yeah.
Yes.
Different tires, I think.
So that was the big one. And then obviously we've talked about it before, but Imola is officially not on the calendar for next year, which...
Yeah, they announced it, showed it.
Very disappointing, I think. But obviously we're adding in the street circuit in Madrid in Spain. So now there's 2 Spain Grand Prix. But Barcelona potentially is going to be falling off in the future. So
yeah, but to Spain for next year.
Yes.
And then Monaco moves up. Or moves back,
yes.
To like this time frame right now.
Yeah, and I think the frustration for most people obviously is like if you're a North American fan, obviously we're in a different time zone than you would be for Monaco. So, the race is going to potentially be going on at the same time as the Indy 500.
Yeah, and I think you'll have to flip back and forth as a fan. Like,
yeah, you have to choose which one that you want to go to potentially.
Well, they've always had to choose which one you were going to go to. It was either going to be Monaco or the Indy 500. Right, but now, typically,
financially.
Oh, I know, but we've been able to be fortunate enough to been able to watch them both separately at different times. Like you watch the Monaco GP, that is all good and great, and then now it's time to turn on the Indy 500, right? Yeah. And so that's the big difference is now that's not able to happen for people that are purely like motorsport and watching it and having 2 major events.
Yeah.
On it one day. You know what I mean?
I think a lot of people are, it's going to be tough. And then we know the last 2 years for the Indy 500 has had rain delays. Yeah. So there's going to be some overlapping coverage for sure. So we'll see how that shakes out.
The thing I do like about, though, now is the new calendar that's coming out next year is now, since they did that switch, everything's going to be, they have a whole European summer. It's 12 races or something like that, or 10 races that are all in the European area, which is, I think it's going to be good for the drivers, keep everybody close to home. I kind of like that.
I feel like they still haven't fixed the Vegas to Qatar to Abu Dhabi, all that travel. There's still going to be a lot of triple headers. I think there's actually... for next year, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's 4 races in a row.
Right.
I think that there's and it could be the European leg, but there's there's some big changes.
I know there's three. There's definitely three in a row.
Uh-huh.
And you might be right. I think I did see that they're working for.
Yeah. So I mean, it's going to be. They've been trying, I would say, every year to make some, modifications to make it a little bit more realistic for travel.
Yeah.
And cost, and also the world as they're traveling this huge F1 circus across the planet. So
no, it makes sense. And so I'm kind of geeked on the new schedule. I'm geeked for the new Barcelona street track. We'll see how that goes. So moving on, I think we already briefly talked about Lance Stroll kind of getting back. It seemed like he did pretty good this weekend. No, you're right. He was struggling. Yeah, let me rethink that for a second.
Listen, I think here's the thing about the weekend. What we will say is I feel like Aston Martin, when they need to make a gamble or roll the dice when it comes to like tire strategy, they're like the first team to make the change. So we have seen, I would say at this point, many weekends where the soft tire has been a challenge. The C6 soft tire
seems to
where it's not even the ideal tire to actually run in qualifying, which is so unusual. So we saw some people gambling with the mediums, and we saw Aston Martin actually go onto the mediums first. We saw it during practice, kind of like shaking out that way, where it was like the front runner that was in P1 was on the mediums, George Russell specifically. And so going into qualifying, I think that was like a big conversation. And Aston Martin had ran their softs mostly in practice so that they could save their mediums for qualifying. And they were doing well. Lance ended up still like not making it, in a great position. So he wasn't set up going into the actual race. And then,
so do you think that was affected because of his wrists not being still like a brand new thing, or do you think that was the cars because they were both having kind of issues?
No, I wouldn't say that, because Alonso obviously qualified P6. So, and, was set up for a better position, got into the points, but I think, sure, maybe he's not back to 100%, but I also think he just didn't perform as well as Alonso. Okay. So, we've seen Alonso outperforming him the last few races. So
yeah. The other thing leading up into the weekend that I kind of just thought of really is they figured out that there was an issue with Lewis's car last race
in Spain. Yes.
In Spain.
Yes.
And then they actually kind of looked good during practice.
Yeah, they looked better. So practice 3 was good for Ferrari. It was feeling like they were going to be in the contention for pole. It was feeling like it. Okay,
I know. I was like, all right,
we're going to be looking good.
Lewis is looking faster than Charles.
Lewis is looking good. Charles had crashed, obviously, in free practice 1. So that was...
Which was a weird crash, too, because he went like deep on the one turn and kind of hit that weird wall. It was just an odd crash that he had. It took out both front and rear suspension.
Yes.
It's a decent amount of damage.
We did see Lewis spin too. We saw some challenges this weekend with a lot of drivers, I think. And was it the hot conditions? Was it, a lot of different factors that went into it? Who knows? But
I think that also the big thing was all the rookies had never been there before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. So what was going to take place, which, it seems like a lot of them did struggle. But yeah, speaking of Ferrari, we had hopes. We were thinking that there was going to be, some great performance.
I was hoping. That's what I was rooting for.
I was praying to the gods. And Ferrari won Le Mans. So
it did.
Obviously, we're hoping that juju is going to go down and we're going to see some great stuff happen for F1. But unfortunately, it didn't really play out that way.
It didn't. It's funny as you see those memes. It's like Ferrari in different categories. Yeah, it's just like perfect. Like everything's working really well. And then it's like Ferrari and F1 and it's just issue after issue, clown show. Yeah. What else am I missing leading up to the weekend?
We're on the topic of it, but obviously we have to talk about all the drama that has unfolded. Anytime I feel like there's an off week, there's always a lot of media speculation.
Ferrari stuff. You're right. That's the big stuff. Why did I even not? I should have just led with that. I'm sorry.
The most drama is coming out of the Ferrari camp. So, we're literally hearing it all. Like everything that possibly could be happening. So
what's weird is like in America, you hear. We see a little bit of news because we subscribe to the motorsport stuff. But like, imagine being in Italy and it's like all the news coverage right now is all the stuff on Ferrari.
Yeah. Or after today, Kimi Antonelli. But
that's fine. Well, that's fine. That's going to change the topic for.
Listen, and today I would say there is obviously it's been a poor start for Ferrari, but I mean, like we talked about last time, they were in the second place in the Constructors' Championship because they've been pretty consistent, just not putting it on the podium and not, competing for wins. They're there. They're leading what, the best of the rest, or they're just out of the mix when it comes to the top team. So it's like they're just like in that limbo period. They're in purgatory. That's where they are.
All right, but Ferrari fans, Italian fans, Tifosi fans in particular are very hard on Ferrari, on their team, because they have been struggling for many years. And then they brought the Messiah in with Lewis, and with,
of course,
and Fred Vasseur, being new. Like,
yes,
there's been a lot of rumors spewing out, and I think we should talk about them briefly because maybe I might miss one. One was they want Fred Vasseur's head on a platter, him gone.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, Fred is, not performing to the potential that they want him to. The rumor was, and this has been going on.
And the fact that he brought Lewis in and he's not performing too, so it's like, why did they bring him in too? I don't know. It's so weird.
I mean, the media is gonna say anything that they can possibly say about Lewis. They're gonna say. Now, if Charles was performing winning races and then it would be a driver thing. But all of a sudden, something has changed. And Fred, all of a sudden he's from last year competing for literally the top spot in the constructors to this year. There's been some challenges, and they went with a completely different, like almost 100% redesign this year.
For the front end for sure.
Went
through upper wishbone instead of lower. Yes,
but to say that you're going to fire Fred Vasseur and bring in Christian Horner as a rumor, like, please.
Yeah, I don't think that.
And yes, while the Tifosi are critical, they will ride and die with Ferrari. Yes. So, yes, it's challenging. But so Fred Vasseur, that was a big rumor going into it. And he was, he's always been very direct. We've seen him, I think, in the past, like different comments. He's sworn in press. He's done different things. He's been very honest.
He's been funny. He's been serious.
Funny. Yes. But I think, he was pretty honest and candid. Like, listen, like, I'm getting messages from family members. Like, is this for real? Like, what's going on? Like, stop pretty much putting out negativity and like false stuff. So with that being said, all the drama around Lewis.
But there was also
all the drama around Lewis is that there's more. Trust me. Yeah. There's a rumor for everybody at Ferrari. So, obviously, is Lewis not performing? Does he not want to be there? Is he unsatisfied? He had liked a post on Instagram, and the post on Instagram was talking about how they're not happy with the car's performance, and, it's not, maintaining what they signed, he signed up for. And, did Lewis just like a post about Ferrari and accidentally not read the caption? Probably. But, he was asked a lot.
Or did he like the fact that they are saying the thing out loud?
Being transparent.
And
yeah.
Who cares?
But it was asked to him in 27 million different ways. And is he happy? Is he thinking about leaving? Is he going to retire? Is he done? And, I see all the social media posts about how he's washed and he should leave before the sport, this and that. It's like, oh my God, please. Like, everyone's been saying this shit. Like, even in 2023 or whatever, when he literally was almost P2 in a year where Max and Red Bull dominated and almost won every race. Like,
Alba won.
Please shut up. Like, just shut up. But anyway, so that was one big rumor. Lewis kind of gave the mic drop. Like, I'm in it for the long haul. I came here to be with Fred. I am signed for many seasons. Like,
I'm not going anywhere.
I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah. And then I guess the last rumor that I'll say that I feel is more of a rumor than anything.
I mean, I would hope.
Is the Charles Leclerc.
Right. Charles Leclerc is allegedly thinking of leaving and getting out of his contract. Now, we didn't really hear any comments about like how his takeaway was with the rumor.
Yeah, I'm sure they did, but I don't see it either.
If anybody brought it up to him, like, are you thinking about leaving? Because I don't really think that there was any discussion. It was probably just a small panel that had put something out, but that is now being circulated and spun in the media. So we'll see.
Yes.
But there is a lot of drama around Ferrari.
There is. And then on track this weekend, not so much drama. Kind of lackluster from them.
Yeah, kind of lackluster. It does feel like, obviously, not the greatest qualifying for Charles Leclerc. We're used to seeing him, I would say
3, 4 area.
Yeah, like having a great Saturday. Lewis out-qualified him. He, had a mistake and kind of owned it up that it was some dirty air from Isaac.
So you're aiming to say there was a lot of mistakes by a lot of drivers, and it's funny that you say that because I kind of want to briefly talk about this too. Is it's a little off topic, but it's Danica Patrick.
Okay.
She's always saying, well, she said in particular that this track is not very hard, and
that she did. She got some interesting looks.
She got some looks from her co-hosts.
Martin Brundle,
who have both Martin Brundle and Nico, who both have raced there, who have both, I believe, have crashed there. I know Martin Brundle did.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Nico. I think he may have, but they don't. They have a wall of champions. They call it the wall of champions for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
I think the course is pretty hard. What do you think? I'm not a fan of Danica Patrick for F1. She can live here in the American sports and stay in IndyCar and stay in NASCAR or whatever. I just don't. She does. I don't like her opinion.
She doesn't do it. She doesn't do it for me.
And it's actually something that I will turn away from, so that you lose my viewership if she's on Formula One.
Mm-hmm. Listen, I am a fan of Nico Rosberg. I think he does a great job. I think he's
corny too. Sometimes
he's corny, but I just feel like there's not a great dynamic when she's like involved with the group. Like whether it's her and Jenson Button. Obviously, Jenson Button wasn't there this weekend because he was racing in Le Mans. I don't think there's great dynamic with anybody, like great chemistry when it comes to the way that they work together. But also, I just feel like she says some outlandish stuff sometimes.
She does.
And then, like we've seen her, I think it was in Mexico City, where she's like, okay, and here we go. We're going to go down to turn 1 and it's going to be a turn. And, like it's just really boring. But yeah, sure. She's got the experience when it comes to IndyCar.
She's got experience in racing. I'm not going to deny motorsport and the skill that she has.
And there's been like literally large petitions to have her removed from Sky F1.
I just think there's way better people, better women too, that are more knowledgeable.
I love when they have Naomi Schiff. I think she does a great job.
She's into motorsport too, but she just is a better commentator. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And she doesn't say so much super outlandish shit that's incorrect.
Just not a great representation, and I agree to the point. Like, it's not a very hard track. Like, listen, all tracks are pretty hard and can be very challenging when it comes to driving 250 miles an hour. And
I guess I need her to elaborate on what she means more about that, because that was.
I
had multiple eye rolls from other F1 drivers. That's all I'm gonna say.
Absolutely. Yes, I would take offense to that if I was an F1 driver too, competing in a high stakes race where somebody's trying to tell me that's never raced there that it's not a challenging race.
Yeah.
Enough with Danica.
Yes, thank you. It was a moment in bliss, and I remembered. So, anyways, back to Montreal, back to the Canadian GP. The start of the race.
Mm-hmm.
We were taking, not bets, but talking, what do you think's going to happen between Max and George? Because they were starting in the front row.
Mm-hmm.
The drama that they had in previous races and stuff that has led up.
The last race, they had the drama, but they have had many incidents. And I think it's very clear that they don't really love each other.
I think it's just that, I think they get along just fine, but they have been competitors since they were like children.
Yeah.
All through like karting and like the earlier formulas, and then Max went up early as a 17-year-old, right? Before George, but then George won F2, you know what I mean? But they've always been racing each other the whole life.
There's been a lot of drama between them. They had that incident last year where literally George was like the only driver. He went and snitched on him, and Max got that one place petty grid drop.
I know
penalty.
You never see a one place grid.
Yeah, so he got that. So I think there's been a little bit of animosity there, like a lot of crap talking between the two of them. Listen, George crashed into him in Baku when the sprint race was there, and he was like, "Sorry, mate, I just locked up." And he's like, "Oh, seriously, dickhead." So
I was thinking maybe possibly there's gonna be a little something there.
We're all expecting a little bit of fireworks into turn 1. Like, is Max gonna send it for penalty points
And just take the break and
yeah, like exactly. It was like either George is going to crash into Max into turn 1 and that's that, or Max is going to crash into George and we'll see him in Austria.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like nobody really knew what was going to happen, so we were kind of expecting it to be wild.
But when lights went out,
George had a great start.
George had a really good start and got within 2 car lengths almost right away.
Yeah.
It was actually not even close to anything between first and second. We did see kind of just behind them, though, was Kimi Antonelli overtake.
Piastri.
Yeah, which was pretty sweet to see that car was Antonelli, rookie 18-year-old. 18-year-old.
Oh, yes.
Had a really good start, too. So that Mercedes was rocking at the higher temperatures. And I guess there was...
Which everyone was expecting it not to be because it typically doesn't perform well in high temperatures.
Usually, that last year particularly, the cooler the temperatures, the better the car performs.
But they have, a new front chassis or something, and they were like, apparently they're feeling it. But, I mean, obviously, Antonelli had great qualifying, too. Like, Mercedes just looked good in quality.
They did. You kind of said it before we got started here, is like Antonelli, really needed it. He had, 3
races in a row, he has scored no points. So
2 disqualifications and then a rough one, right?
Well, we had Imola where his engine blew.
Yep, which isn't his fault.
Yep. We had Monaco where he crashed into the wall, so poor qualifying, obviously didn't make it into the points.
Yeah.
And then Spain, DNF. Yeah.
Another engine issue.
Yeah. So he needed this. And I mean, great weekend.
Yeah, and early on, I know I talked about it. Like, I thought he was kind of like the rookie driver, and then things kind of fell off a little bit, and Isaac kind of had a really good run for a moment.
Yeah, I mean, he's still, I think, when you look at it from a points perspective, obviously Kimi is still he's right behind Lewis in the standings, and
this helped a lot.
This definitely helped, yeah, and he needed it from a momentum, I think, for himself, some confidence building,
especially at a track that, like I said earlier, that he's never been to. This is his first time there.
Right. Yeah, that's super impressive. Going against a freaking 4-time world champion. We saw him, battling with Max.
And overtaking the current champion, the current leader, in the drivers' championship. So, confident boosting all around weekend for him.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
First
podium. Yeah. That's very exciting.
Yeah. So, and you could see George did, they congratulated each other really, really well. It was good to see, I guess, a Mercedes double podium. That was kind of cool to see.
Yeah. Toto's riding a high.
Toto is riding high. I think
Toto and the team.
Yeah.
This is a big deal for them. So.
But let's shift gears just a little bit, and I think we should talk maybe, I guess, about Ferrari again, because they finished. Lewis just
they finished 5th and 6th.
But Lewis also took some major damage.
I know.
Again.
I know. Seriously, and until we knew what happened, it was like, I mean, I guess I wasn't paying attention to
And you saw a photo video of it too, no?
I haven't, no. I don't know if I want to research it. But we just, at some point, obviously, we didn't know if it was going to be 1 stop, 2 stop, so we saw some different things. But Charles had started on the hards and Lewis had started on the mediums. So there was a little bit of pit change. So Lewis ended up behind Charles and he was like, I have no pace. I don't know what's going on. And his engineer was like, listen, you actually have good pace considering the damage. So he had 20 point loss of downforce.
Yeah, they based it between on a scale of 0 to 100, and you can 20-point loss is which is 20% of the car's downforce essentially is what he's saying.
Yes, and everybody who knows when we go to Canada, Gary the groundhog and his family are always trackside.
Yep.
They even had a graphic during testing the day that with just safety car.
People wear groundhog.
There's literally a mascot. Yes.
And so briefly, for people that watch us, just for us, thank you very much. But people that don't really know, it's not a state park, but it's a Providence Park, or it's a national park for Canada. Right there, it's an island. And they keep all the natural animals and everything that's there, because during the rest of the year, it's just an open park, and it's only closed for racing during this time frame. So, there's animals that are literally this close to the track.
I mean, they're right there. Sometimes the cars will be driving by and they'll see them during practice, but I mean, obviously during a race, they're not paying attention. So Lewis realized he picked up damage. He said he felt something. He didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
Well, he was told, and obviously it was released, that it was a groundhog that he had hit.
Yeah.
And of all drivers
He's
to hit and kill an animal
he's like
on the grid, it had to be Lewis. Like, he's devastated that he killed an animal because he loves animals. And obviously, it did affect his race. He started P5. He finished P6. Nothing crazy. Like, I think he had a better weekend. But he's definitely bummed out the situation. And so, sad to see. The animal was on the side of the track for like 40 laps. So, But
but he didn't get DNF'd. He didn't retire the car.
Right.
He was able to maintain 5th place.
Sixth
place.
he
Sorry,
finished,
sorry, 6th place. And he could have. I mean, the gap between him and the person behind him was kind of big. So I don't know if he was ever in danger of that. Even with the major damage, which was
on his second pit stop, he went in and came back out in the same position. So
yeah.
So
I think that's you brought up a good topic while we were talking about that, was the start of the race, that most people were on the mediums. A few gambles, Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris were on the hards, and that seemed to be the right move. That really, at least
they definitely. I mean, they were able to make their way up the grid. I think they lucked out with that. So obviously they were able to pit later. That kind of opened up the window for them to slot themselves.
Well, I mean, it put Lando in a better position at the end of the race, where he was now battling. To overtake his teammate, which ended up not happening.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. But so I think the tire strategy was kind of smart on the hards for the beginning, because
I feel like the tires were like everything this weekend. Like the mediums,
a lot of times they are, I mean, but like this in time is like, man, the mediums were only good for 10, 11 laps maybe.
To see like Max be almost one of the first, if not the
first or second,
to pit, I'm like, whoa,
he was the first televised, but he might have been the second.
Yeah. No, I know. And so to see that, and like within, you're at 70 lap race, like 12 laps in, you see one of the front runners pitting. That was kind of wild to see. So I already was feeling, okay, the hards are probably going to benefit because they're going to be able to go longer. So, hey, sometimes it shakes out for you. Sometimes it doesn't. They didn't lose any positions at the start, which was good for them, because sometimes you see that, but yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. Disappointing a little bit, because they didn't really attack forward. You know what I mean? So
you're talking about Ferrari?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were just kind of stuck there.
I think we're still like hoping, like anytime that they qualify like P4, P5, we're like hoping for a podium, praying for a podium. So we'll get there one day, but hey, listen, I think hopefully there's going to be some upgrades, Austria's next, then Silverstone. So, one can
we'll definitely probably see some upgrades by Silverstone, I'm sure, for everybody.
Yeah.
We had some issues with, I guess, the other Red Bull. Yuki had a 10-second penalty.
Yuki had a 10-place grid drop.
Thank you. 10-place grid drop.
Yes, because he overtook under the red flag yesterday in qualifying. So it's just, he had a better qualifying. He definitely, performed better this weekend from a quality perspective.
But he started, 18th? So...
But he started P20. But then he got moved up because Liam Lawson and Pierre Gasly started from the pit lane, so he started P18. So a little bit of a tougher weekend again.
Yeah, and he didn't really move up to a whole lot either.
He was in the points at one time, but I think he got.
I think that's just because
because of the tire strategy. Like, he was one of the people that kind of stayed out. Gambled, did some stuff, and didn't shake out the greatest.
Speaking of gambling.
I'm
gonna say it was Williams, and Alex Albon made a major gamble. Stayed out way too long.
Did not work.
And then when they realized that, they asked Alex to pit, and Alex was like very vocal, and you always say that.
He's so vocal on the radio. My goodness. He's always got something to say.
He's like, man, no, you guys made me do this. We got to try and stick it out. And I think he gave it his best shot.
He did, and then they had an issue, and he ended up still having to retire.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he also had an issue during qualifying, and I think that was what caused the red flag. It was the whole entire back end just came flying off.
Yes. You ever seen, like, it was basically like a tornado came through and just ripped the whole side of the car off. Like, literally the entire side.
Yeah, he was just going straight down the road and ripped it right off.
Yeah. I feel like we see that sometimes. So it was, whatever happened, something blew, like a piston blew inside and like blew the whole side off.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. So pretty crazy. But even Carlos, so like Williams really tried the gamble. Like at one point we looked up and Carlos and Ocon were 51 laps on the same set of hards.
They were. Ocon went hard on that too.
Ocon loves to run tires and like the whole race. Like he's like, you know what? If I'm gonna gamble, I'm gonna go for it.
Yeah.
And if a safety car would have came out, they would have looked like heroes.
They would have, and I think they were gambling on
for
that.
Sure.
Because as kind of the things progress, cars are getting a little bit faster, but tires are degrading. They're pushing it. I mean, you see the shot that's like way down when you see the turn for the wall of champions, and it's like, man, they're all coming within, just like in Monaco, within
centimeters,
inches of that thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of time, but it didn't happen. It was.
I thought they were going to cause the safety car.
I know.
Like they're 51 laps in, their tire is going to blow. Like this is crazy to me. So
Carlos going that long, I guess, just took the major gamble, but it didn't really pay off either.
Yeah, no, it didn't work for Williams this weekend, which is disappointing because
they've been fairly competitive this season.
And they've been doing great this season. And I think, they got two good drivers. Their car is pretty solid. We saw them in free practice 1. They were P2 and P3. So it was like, oh my God, it's just practice. It's just practice.
It is,
but still.
which it always is.
Yeah. So a little bit of a bummer, but they'll come back stronger, I'm sure, in Austria. So
yeah,
we'll see.
I think we can finally talk about it.
I'm like, let's get into it. I've been ready. I've been waiting.
Okay. So the McLarens.
So first, I just think something wasn't like, it was like, where was McLaren's pace all weekend? And
you're right. That's like I kind of want to know what you guys think about McLaren too, because they didn't have the pace.
Like, weren't on pole. So we went into the weekend qualifying. We didn't have a McLaren on pole, and we didn't have Max Verstappen. First,
which is thank God, refreshing.
So it was like, okay, everybody is so used to going into the weekend and they're like, okay, it's going to be an Oscar Piastri or a Lando Norris or, you can never count Max Verstappen out. But
no,
I have been saying too, you can't count George Russell out. And George Russell, back-to-back poles in Canada.
Well, so typically, I guess that's normal.
Yeah, so, I think it's a track he feels really, George feels comfortable with. But it was unusual to see McLaren, who has just dominated. I mean, dominated.
They are, they're the leading team.
We saw last race in Spain, Oscar had the biggest qualifying gap to pole position. And so to come in here and see neither of them qualify 1 or 2.
Or 3.
Well, Oscar was P3.
Yeah.
And Antonelli, obviously, that Antonelli's move on Piastri, lap 1 is what got him the podium.
Absolutely.
But even during the race,
Oscar not have the greatest start then, I guess, either.
Well, he
didn't happen at turn 1. It happened at turn 2.
He held himself back because, whether it was the tires or whatever they were managing, I'm not too sure. But they do always focus on, we need to really, maintain, the front left. We need to maintain the front left when it comes to the 2 McLarens. Mm-hmm. But I think that there's something that was not 100% with McLaren this weekend, because on any other circuit that we've seen so far this season, it was like they were just blowing past people. And a rookie in a Mercedes, granted, Mercedes looked a lot better this weekend, but we've seen, Antonelli, like, we've seen him be under pressure. And he even said post-race he was stressed and, it was a stressful situation. He held his own, but I've seen Oscar do some crazy overtakes this year. In questionable places, Saudi Arabia on Lewis, Australia on Lewis, like some really crazy challenging ones to see that he wasn't even there.
Yeah, the car was a struggle. They didn't have it set up right.
There was something about that. They didn't run the gamble with the mediums in qualifying either, because they're a team that I feel like just sticks to they're like, this is our book.
This is the plan, yeah.
And we're not trying anything.
Yeah.
I think they probably would have been on pole if they would have done something, but something wasn't 100% there. And so going into this weekend, the race, Oscar was in the ideal position. I said pre-race that Oscar was going to win. I just expected him to kind of come through.
Yeah.
I also expected there to be something crazy happen P1, P2 in turn 1, but nothing happened. And And Lando was P7. And so a little bit, out of place for him, having to claw back essentially. But like you said earlier, he was on the hards. So I think that kind of was that offset that put him into position to, be competing. So.
Yeah, weird. And then kind of brought him into the fold. He benefited from the hard tire start. And we kind of talked about it. I know people have talked about it, the tension that could be brewing, that usually brews between the top two drivers. If there's a driver battle starting to happen in the championship. And people have always said, "Oh, when's the Lando Norris Oscar Piastri gonna hit? When are they gonna collide? When are they gonna do it?"
It's not if, it's when.
Yeah, you keep hearing that bullshit, right? You keep hearing that shit, and honestly, it shouldn't have happened really today. There was
should not have,
but it did happen.
Should not have happened.
But it didn't happen in like grand form. Like a lot of grand things that happen between teammates or rivals.
Wheel to wheel.
Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo in Baku years ago. Just devastating. Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Monza, cars on top of each other, and devastating. Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Jeddah.
Oh, well, Jeddah too.
Silverstone, drama. So we were waiting, expecting, if not when,
If not if, when.
Yeah.
I think, Nico Rosberg, Lewis Hamilton, Spain 2016, they came together.
And go even older, Michael Schumacher and Niki Lauda.
There's a lot of crazy championship.
It always happens with drivers in the championship because they want to be number one. They want to be, and it starts getting down to.
And the crazy thing about,
we're not at the wire yet. I mean, we're like midway almost, or right around that.
I think that Lando takes listen, we've talked about it so many times, and we'll talk about it again. But I think that when you compare the two drivers, Lando's a lot more emotional. And
more in his head,
and Oscar's like the most cool, calm, and collected driver I have literally ever seen in my life. Like he's my first win, great job, cool guys. Oh wow, he cheeky, just little stuff. Like he's never stressed. He's not gonna even today. He was like, oh cool, he was able to go on his way. I'm sure he was annoyed. But, at the end of the day, it is what it is. But yes, when you are, they're P1 and P2 in the Drivers' Championship. So I'm sure Lando is feeling the pressure. Oscar out-qualified him, was in the position to probably be in a better place. Lando was very fast at the end and was catching him.
Played the cards right. And I wonder if there was team orders. We haven't really heard anything.
There definitely was not. Now, McLaren's not going to do that, especially in the position. First of all, if they did, that'd be super fucked up, but sorry. Because Oscar is leading the championship. You can't team order somebody who's leading the championship.
However,
fight fair because...
Yeah, and this track is kind of tend to be hard to overtake on because it's kind of narrow. We watched it with your parents today. Yeah. And her dad's like, it's a very narrow track. Yes, it is.
Oh my God, when Stroll ran Gasly off, he just ran him off the track. But no, I think that, first of all, completely Lando's mistake. I think there's no doubt about it. Lando already said it, but
he did. He already took full blame for it, responsibility for it.
I'm not, sure.
Luckily, he didn't take out Oscar Piastri.
Right. I think that exactly to your point. I think it would be a bigger problem.
Yeah.
And
look, like I said earlier, it was the most mild coming together between the top two I've seen in a long time, maybe since.
And they weren't even fighting for a podium. That's the crazy Thing.
No.
P4, P5, and Lando just sent his car into the back of Oscar Piastri, took his wing off, crashed into the wall, and was out of the race.
And that happened with 3 laps left.
Yeah, so...
And that was really the highlight of the whole race.
And that was, there really wasn't much. It was pretty standard. Not a lot of penalties. We saw Liam Lawson DNF, which he took a new engine, so they wanted to protect that because they were suffering from another issue in Alex Albon.
Yep.
And then, we had one penalty, which was from Stroll. And that was because he pushed Pierre into the grass and
didn't leave any room when there was trying to be a pass between like the back of the midfield and I didn't leave a room and put him on the grass. That was absolutely plain as day. You could see it as a fan. That it was definitely should have been a penalty.
You were like, "That's penalty. Clock it.
Lock it in. Send it up. Don't even need to send it to the stewards."
Yeah. So, I mean, other than that, it was a pretty mild. We didn't have rain, so I think that's what it didn't really throw into it. Typically, Canada is one of those races where you're like, "Oh, it's one of the best of the year." Not the greatest.
Usually, if not the best, one of the best. It's like very entertaining because there's always something happening, car spinning, things like that.
Somebody crashing into the wall. We had a little bit of like interesting stuff that happened during practice and stuff, but yeah, not a lot. We did see Lando apologize to Oscar in the media pen post race and said, "So sorry, totally my fault." It was very tight between Oscar. Kimmy, Oscar, and Lando at the end. So it's like, if Lando didn't hit him, would Oscar have caught Kimmy?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I don't think they were that close enough.
They were all within deer.
To a second to a second and a half.
Yeah, but you need like I feel like multiple
They keep saying it, 3 seconds at most per lap faster.
Yeah.
To even catch up and to make a pass. And with 3 laps left, I just didn't see it happen.
Yeah.
No,
I agree.
I like the fact that there was the alternate strategy with Lando because it did work out for him until it didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I did. He did that to himself.
Because those mediums were tragic, and the only best option was to be on the hards for as long as possible, and then give yourself a set of mediums for 10 laps or 9 laps at the very end. And who are the teams that did that? Did all right, I guess, in my opinion.
I know. But bummer to see. I mean, I don't think McLaren has any like sweat over the team because they're so far ahead in the constructors.
The constructors, no sweating. You're right of that.
But the drivers, I mean, obviously Oscar gained some points. Lando missed out on 10 points today.
You said right before we got started, he's 22 points ahead?
He's 22 points,
ahead of line there. Yep. And then the gap is then George Russell right behind them.
No, it's still Max.
Oh, yeah.
And George.
Then George. And that kind of has tightened up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, I think it's still like anybody's game, especially if we see like, and I'm not saying that McLaren like didn't do well this weekend, but we're used to them 20 seconds ahead, just completely dominating all weekend and front row lockout and all sorts of stuff. So, was it just track specific? Who knows?
I think it was.
Are we going to see, some things come summer break and then all of a sudden there's some big changes? So I don't want to rule anything out at this point. It is what it is. I think George is going to have some momentum. He's feeling better with Mercedes. I think you can literally never rule out Max. And it's still very tight in the top 4.
It is.
So we'll see what shakes out.
Do we have a break between the next race, or is it already it's about
1 week off and then we have another race? Well, we have back-to-back races.
Where are we going? I forget.
We're going to Austria.
Oh, man.
Red Bull Ring. The home of the initial Lando Max drama from last year.
Yeah. And very high-speed track, a lot of elevation.
A lot of penalties. A lot of track limits.
Yeah.
A lot of problems.
Track limit every year.
Yeah, I think it's typically like 70+ track limit issues. So we'll see. But, it's one of Max's home races. So
one of the Max's home races. I wonder if they made any adjustments to the track with
the track limits.
With like bringing track limits closer to the edge, because that's kind of always what we want to see as these progress. Because I'm not necessarily a fan of the cars that are going completely off the limits and are or even
get the advantage.
Yeah.
But they were shelling out penalties like left and right last year, so we shall see.
We'll see what
takes
changes
place.
If they even change. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, but I think there's going to be it's going to be a good race, and it typically is. It's all about qualifying. It's typically pretty close, so we'll see.
So, is there anything else that I'm missing, or did we pretty much sum it up?
It summed it up. McLaren Civil War incoming.
It's coming. So guys, if you guys made it this far, you guys are awesome. Thank you very much. We don't have any sponsors, so there's no breaking for sponsors. But if you can subscribe, tell us what you guys thought of the race if you guys watched it. Tell us what you guys think of Formula One if you guys just have any comments. We'd love to hear from you. I guess that's it for me. If that's it for you, Eileen, thank you for talking. Until next time, we'll guys see you later. All right?
Yes. Bye.